Hi, once again, Phil Brown here with Next Gen Cam. As you can see, we're coming to you live from my new stream shack as we've built with the Motorhome Life. And today we're going to be talking about how to utilize model in your toolpath and when is the appropriate time to utilize it to make much cleaner and simpler toolpaths. So let's go ahead and jump in and see how this goes. All right, looking at our part here, we can see our first scenario. How often has this happened to you guys where you went ahead and did some rest machining? In this case, we're using a 1/4-inch end mill after a 1/2-inch end mill, and we're boring down into those counter bores, yet we don't want to currently with our roughing strategy. Again, this is at a simple level of how we can utilize a couple of different strategies, utilizing the model actual section of our toolpath to fix it. The first and foremost for a lot of people would say is, oh, well, why don't you just go ahead and utilize avoid touch surfaces? Well, I can't in a roughing cycle to start with. However, I may want to avoid these actual surfaces multiple times. So let's go ahead and go back to our design workspace. And let's start with the simpler way of the two, is let's go into our surfaces and let's just simply create a couple of patches on this part. So we're going to go ahead and patch these two holes here on the left side of our part. And on the right side of our part, we're going to use a little different trick. We're going to go back to our solids menu, and we're going to take that body, and we're going to copy and paste it. And what that's going to do is that's going to give us two bodies to work with. So what I like to do is I like to label my original body as the OG for the original gangster. And then my body number 4, which is my duplicate, well, either I would label that duplicate, or I like to just say modify, right? And if we turn off our original, you can now see we're working with that second body, to which I can go in on simple features, highlight the faces holding my control key, and follow that up with a delete key, and remove those features altogether. So again, let's go ahead and turn off that modify, the couple of patches we made, and get the original gangster turned back on. So when we go back to the manufacturer workspace, and we go into our toolpath, is we're going to go to that second tab and we're going to go down to the model section. So we're going to turn this on, and what it's now asking us is for surfaces or bodies based on what we want to incorporate into this toolpath. So I'm going to expand out my design tree, and I'm going to select, just to start with, just the two patches, and we still want to include our setup model, right? So our original model is still in play here, and we're going to hit OK. And as you guys are going to see, is we are now avoiding those two patched areas because those holes are sealed. It's machining right over it and keeping that surface clean. So let's go back one more time. This time we're going to add in the body. And again, we're going to actually, let's take the surfaces out and just add the body. So what's going to happen here now you're going to see is we avoid one side, but we don't avoid the other. Again, we're going to combine all of them this time round. Again, this is at the simplest of simple level for all of you out there, is we are using a combination of a couple of different things from surfaces and bodies to avoid, so that we don't waste time machining areas where we don't need to machine. Again, this is very, very handy when you're trying to avoid holes and features. So let's go look at a little bit more of a complex strategy here. So on this actual mold here, you're going to notice that I have a 3D scallop toolpath finishing the top of the part. However, as you can see, is I'm dipping into each and every one of these holes. That could risk me causing surface blemishes and other problems. Again, it's not a big deal because I can go back to design, and I'm going to do this just with a handful of holes, hold control, go around and hit delete. As you may be asking right now, I'm not obviously copying the body over. So let's go ahead and do that first. So I just control Z, copy paste. Again, turn off that original. Delete what I don't want from my modified version. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and grab a handful of holes. And then for a few of these other ones, I could go ahead and patch those as well. And as you're going to notice is I'm going through and having to patch each one individually, which can be a little frustrating. And what we're going to do is we are actually going to leave a few of those holes just normal so that we can compare. Again, in my manufacturer workspace, I go to my scallop toolpath. And this time I do have avoid touch surface. So let's try that on a couple holes. So let's go ahead and say we want to avoid these 5 holes here before we ever got to the point of adding our model, and hit OK. So what you're going to notice is we're going to get near those holes and then we're going to stop, and we're actually not really even machining over the edge due to that boundary overlap. Again, this is taking more cycle time. As you can see, we're getting kind of a very crazy pattern happening in our toolpath where, again, utilizing model over a void touch surface is going to give us a dramatically different experience based on this part. So again, we're going to go through. I'm going to grab all of these in one shot. I'm going to hit OK. We're still keeping the original setup. And then as you're going to see is everywhere except those 4 holes down here at the bottom, we're dipping in still. We are machining right over the top of those holes. One big thing to look at too for you guys out there is if we start looking at the file size that we're working with, you'll see that taking effect by a reduction of points. So again, we're at 1.2. We turn off model. We hit OK. This should go up to 1.9. Actually, 1.3. It came back down. So we are creating more points, which means more data in our toolpath. Our third example here is we're going to go ahead and look at this mold. Again, same kind of scenario. We're already in the design workspace. Let's go ahead and patch maybe a large feature here. So let's go ahead and see if we can patch this guy up to machine over top of it. Again, running all the way around this edge because we're not recognizing it as a chain automatically. But we went ahead and patched that. One thing we did get lucky here, this is flat. That patch is flat. Same thing would apply as if we patched this hole here. We might actually get a nice clean blend across those two. But what would be better at the end of the day, again, is just utilizing the idea that I can go in, grab that surface, and hit delete, right? In this case, I crashed my whole model, so let's back up one. The reason why we're crashing our model is because I made the mistake of being in the surface workspace. So we go back to solids. As the bad habit I'm certain to give you guys, and I shouldn't be, we need to duplicate that body with a little copy paste. Again, Control C, Control V, turn off that original, and then we can grab that surface. And in this case, it's a blind hole, so we're going to actually grab it all the way down at the bottom. And again, we can do that right here with this hole too, where it's going to self-heal and patch itself up. You can't always get away with this, guys, but a lot of times this is a very handy trick to be able to go in and delete it. We can always unstitch surfaces and play with that more. However, very simply on a lot of geometry, we went through, we removed those features, right? And then we added additional patches or parts of our model to clean up our machining lines. So if we go back to manufacture, we go ahead and look at our steep and shallow toolpath. We're going to add in our actual model. Again, selecting those model boundaries, or model bodies, I should say, in addition to what we're using. So again, this will clean up our toolpath, allow us to machine right over those features as if they were there, again, reducing our points and allowing us to drop our cycle time or create much cleaner and simpler finishes. At this point, I want to thank you all for paying attention and following along. We love the comments. We love the subscribes. We're always looking for suggestions. As well, we have a Lunch and Learn at Reynolds Machine coming up later in April. Feel free to sign up now. We are limiting it to 30 seats, and they are getting booked fast. That being said, you guys all have a great weekend, and I hope this helps out. Just a reminder for those of you in the Ohio area, we will be doing a Lunch and Learn at Reynolds Machinery. Come by and take a class taught by yours truly on either April 13th or 14th, or even both days for that fact. Or you could just grab a free lunch and say hi. Thanks, guys.